Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Film Fiction. Today we are going to be reading The Road to Joy by R.B. Neuroscience has advanced in 20 years since Cozy Glow has turned to stone. Twilight can help her now. She's sure of it. So, haven't read this story yet, but with a title like that, I feel inclined that I have to. I've seen this one pop up before. Haven't actually read it yet, though. So we're going to go into this blind. I will talk, I will commentate, I will do whatever I feel like doing as I go through this. So don't expect the most serious reading of this. So you've been warned, just a heads up. I'll get my thoughts about it as we go through. But yeah, we're just going to jump right on in. The road to joy is paved with good intentions. So you think she can be cured? Windspark asked. His wife's hoof was wrapped firmly in his in his own. See? Grammatical errors. I'm also going to screw up reading this sometimes. That's gonna happen also. Twilight Sparkle, now sole ruler of Equestria for 20-some years, looked down on the two from her higher vantage point and smiled. They had aged since she hadn't seen them last, but her proposal had injected new life into them, life that certainly had faded in all the years they'd petitioned her for their child's freedom, all the years she'd had to deny them their daughter. Yes, she said, our understanding of the brain has developed quite a bit since your daughter's outburst. What once seemed like wanton cruelty and malice can now be explained by science. Her brain merely made connections it shouldn't have. We now know that this is treatable. And this treatment? Featherfall said. It's proven? It's quite a miracle, Twilight reassured them. It's been shown to greatly increase patients' ability to cope with the pressures of society that previously burdened them. It's currently being used to empty out our asylums. Okay. Featherfall glanced at her husband. Then, if it means she can finally come home, I believe this is her best chance at being able to live a normal, healthy life, Twilight said, her voice gentle and kind. There is hope for her now, a modern miracle brought on by modern science. The married couple looked at each other, nodded. If it means we'll get our Cozy Glow back, Windspark said. The old Cozy, the one we loved then. We give our consent, Featherfall finished. Twilight smiled at them. Thank you, both of you. You have made the right decision. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Twilight glanced at the filly, smiled. I will admit, Cozy, this is a certain amount of joy in performing your treatment myself. Scientific curiosity, but also the pleasure of getting to finally save you. Cozy looked up at her. She was currently fixed to an operating table, her head held down by straps so she could only move her eyes. Save me, huh? Is that what you think you're doing? Twilight had become patient in her time as princess. She'd had to learn it, overcome herself. She smiled. I know this must be scary for you, she said. Not really, Cozy admitted. You've got me strapped to a table and haven't told me what you're going to do to me yet. But it can't be anything too bad. You're still one of the good guys now. Now, if our positions were reversed, well, who knows what I'd do to you. Twilight walked across the tile floor over to the bed and knelt down so Cozy could see her face. She was still smiling. It's okay, Cozy. I'm here to help you. Yeah, you keep saying that, Cozy replied, smirking. What are you planning on doing? Hugging me until I reform? No, not this time. Actually, I'm here to treat the root cause of all your ills. My horrible personality? No, Twilight said, patient and calm as ever. Your brain. We have a much deeper understanding of how consciousness works now than we did when you were turned to stone. Medical science has advanced considerably. Did you know the brain is made up of thousands of... She thought of how she could explain it to her. This child arrested in stone for 20 years. Connections. Your entire mind exists in the physical structure of your brain. Fascinating lecture, Princess. Well, what's that got to do with little old me? Well, this new understanding of the brain has led to a new understanding of what are now known as mental disorders, things that can go wrong in that structure, as well as how to treat them. Cozy snorted. So you've got some kind of new medicine. You think that'll fix me? Make me good? Not a medicine, Twilight explained. A surgery. Surgery? It's called a oh god, leucotomy. Oh my god, I apologize everybody for breaking character and butchering that whole thing. It's pronounced it's spelled Leucotomy. If anybody is just listening to this. That's the word that threw me off. Leucotomy. Leucotomy? Leucotomy? I don't know. Medical terms. So I know some, not all of them. Cozy was regarding her seriously now. What's that mean? Well, if the issue with someone's personality come from the brain structure, the brain making bad connections, then if we were to cut those connections, you're going to cut my brain? Twilight smiled. Not quite so barbarically, but yes, I am going to perform psychosurgery. What will it do to me? Make it easier for you to function in society, Twilight explained. Make it easier for you to behave normally. I see. I'm trying to help you live a normal life, Cozy, Twilight said, still calm, still smiling. It was unfair of us to turn you to stone. You were just a child, and we didn't understand how to help you then. Now we do. And I suppose I don't get a choice in being made normal. Your parents already consented to the operation. Figures, Cozy replied. They're spineless. They do anything you told them was good for me. That's how I wrapped them around my hoof, you know. Anything I wanted, I just had to ask. They petitioned me for years after you were gone to release you, Twilight said. Figures, Cozy said again. I always was their perfect daughter. Look where that got me, strapped to an operating table, about to have brain surgery. I'm glad you're so calm, Twilight said. I'm not, Cozy replied. I'm desperately trying to think of a way to kill you before you kill me. I'm not killing you, Cozy. I'm helping you. Says you just don't want me on your conscience anymore. This is a convenient excuse for you. Your attempts to rile me aren't going to work, Cozy, Twilight said. I'm past that now. I've grown up. In the 20 years you were gone. Golly, you must have gotten pretty detached, too. If this is what you're into, you're a real princess now. That I am. Twilight stood up. Lighting her horn, she wheeled a tray over. Upon it were the tools she'd need for the leucotomy. The first of which was a straight razor. Lifting it up in her magic, she began to slice away at Cozy's loose curls. Like being at the barber's, Cozy said. Once the mane was gone, Twilight began shaving her coat and the area around where she would be operating. The skin underneath was pink, covered in goosebumps. You're not going to knock me out? Cozy asked. I've given you a local anesthetic, Twilight replied. The brain has no pain receptors. You won't feel a thing. That's a demented thing to say. I want to make that perfectly clear. Once the patch was bare, Twilight Sparkle levitated up a hypodermic needle. It was a big metal thing. This will pinch a little. I promise it's the only pain you will feel. I always hated needles. Bear with it. Cozy grit her teeth. Twilight pressed the tip of the needle against Cozy's scalp at an angle, then pierced it in one smooth motion. Cozy sucked in a gulp of air through her teeth. Pressing onward, Twilight sank the needle sideways under Cozy's skin. The plunger depressed under the force of her magic, and the scalp near the tip of the needle bubbled up from the injected fluid, forming a dome against the skull. The needle withdrew. Twilight set it back on the tray. Just need to wait for the effects to set in, she said. And then you can off me for good. I can see why what you're trying to do, Cozy, Twilight replied, walking back around to Cozy's eyeline. You've noticed that I get a little upset when you insinuate that I'm killing you, so you're trying to use it to provoke a reaction that'll get me to stop the procedure. Cozy grinned. You're good, princess. Guilty as charged. I will admit it, it does get under my skin, Twilight continued. But I know that what I'm doing will help you reintegrate into society in a way that the connections in your brain made you unable to before. Don't you want to be a better member of society, Cozy? I'd rather be me. Wouldn't you rather be you? I don't have a disorder, Cozy. Cozy smirked. If I have a disorder, then it's what made me who I am. What right do you have to take that away from me? The same right a doctor has to fix a broken leg. I am obligated to do this. You'll thank me when it's over. I was right, Cozy simply replied. You are enjoying this. Maybe we aren't that different after all. You just have better intentions. Twilight patted her on the head. It's okay. It'll be over soon. She circled back around to the side of the table, lit her horn, and pinched Cozy's scalp. Feel that? Not telling. Twilight adopted a stern look. It'll hurt if you can still feel it, you know. I'd rather leave you guessing. Suit yourself. Twilight lifted up a marker, then, and began to draw lines on Cozy's scalp. She levitated over a book, checked some measurements, then continued her work. Have you ever done one of these before? Cozy asked. I have, actually. 5 times to prepare for this one. The surgeons I trained under said my work was impeccable. Why'd you have to do it yourself? Wouldn't it make more sense for one of those surgeons to be here? I could get one of them, if you like. They're observing us from the gallery. Cozy thought about it. No, she said after a moment. If it has to be anyone, it might as well be you. But admit it, you're just trying to fix your own mistakes. This isn't about helping me. This is about making yourself feel better. Twilight chuckled. Maybe it is, in part, but I do want to help you, Cozy. That's all I've ever wanted to do. She put the marker down. A set of lines now crisscrossed Cozy's shaved scalp, indicating just where to cut. Are you going to help Chrysalis and Turek? I never ever learned how to pronounce that guy's name, by the way. Turek, I don't know. Cozy asked. No, I don't think there's any way of saving them. Regrettably, we don't know enough about their species' brain structures. But maybe in another 20 years' time, medical science will have an answer for them too. I'd love to reunite you with your friends someday, Cozy. I'll make it my mission. We weren't friends, Cozy replied, but I suppose I wouldn't mind seeing them again. Twilight smiled, even though Cozy couldn't see her. She picked up a scalpel, dug it into Cozy's scalp. The blood started immediately. Twilight levitated over a bottle of sanitized saline solution and began trickling it over the area, washing the crimson away even as it oozed from the incision. The goal was just to remove an outer square of skin, which that the skull could be drilled without impediment. 1 line, 2, 3, 4. A nice neat square of skin which was then peeled back on the edge of the blade. You aren't feeling that, right? Twilight asked. I can hear it, Cozy said, but you can feel it. Not telling. Twilight set down the scalpel on her tray, brought up a bottle of alcohol and rinsed the area clean of blood. The white of Cozy's exposed skull was dyed slightly red. Twilight retrieved the hand drill. What are you doing now? Cozy asked, as Twilight pressed the sharp tip of the drill bit against the bone. I'm about to drill a small hole into your cranium, Twilight replied. Golly, isn't it a bit morbid doing all this to a poor defenseless child, princess? There was a quiver in Cozy's voice now. That hadn't been there before. Twilight patted her on the shoulder. You're going to be fine, Cozy. Don't worry. And with that, Twilight began spinning the handle. The bit turned slowly at first, but quickly gaining speed, creating a horrible sound, half whirring, half rattling, then the bit quickly bit into the bone, offering some resistance, but nothing Twilight's alicorn level magic couldn't easily overcome. Screwed up a few times in that sentence there. Slowly, with the care of a surgeon, Twilight guided the drill further and further into Cozy's skull. Bits of cranium flew out of the end of the hole. The air was filled with the burning, acrid smell that wound its way into Twilight's nostrils and hung there. A drop of blood trickled down from the upper incision and was flung into the air by the motion of the bit. It splashed against Twilight's face, a scar of red against her pure lavender coat, but she did not flinch, could not afford to. Twilight spent a year studying and practicing, learning and revising, cutting and drilling, hours blurring into days, blurring into weeks and into months, all for this, all to help Cozy glow. It was the filly's best shot at living a normal life. Didn't everyone deserve a second chance? All at once, the resistance to the bit's progress dropped away. Twilight immediately pulled back, not letting the metal implement go even a millimeter further. It retracted from Cozy's skull, stained red. She wiped the blood off on a cloth and set the drill down. It was then that Twilight noticed that Cozy's teeth were clenched. "How are you feeling, Cozy?" she asked. "Too loud," Cozy replied. "Impossibly loud." "I'm sorry," Twilight apologized, her words gentle, caring. "I'm done drilling now." Inside the hole, Twilight knew, lay the meninges, 3 layers of membrane that enclosed Cozy's brain. They would need to be cut carefully before she could properly access the gray matter. She brought over a pair of surgical scissors, specially designed things with long, thin blades that could reach inside the hole she drilled, and inserted them into the opening. Snip, snip, snip. The metal instrument was withdrawn. "We're almost done, Cozy," Twilight said. "There's just one thing left for me to do. Then you'll be sent to recover, and after that, you can go home with your parents. I suppose it'll be nice to see them again. That's the spirit, Cozy. Focus on what your life will be like when this is all over." Twilight lifted up the last implement on the tray. It looked almost like the hypodermic needle, in that it was similarly shaped and also had a plunger at the back of it. But it was to serve a wholly different purpose. This device was called a leucotomy. Leucotomy? Leucotomy. I don't know. I'm sorry. Though she knew what it did and how it worked, Twilight briefly depressed the plunger anyway. At the tip of the thin needle part of the instrument, a length of wire extended from 2 sides, forming a rough circle of metal. This was what would perform the cutting, excising part of the brain, severing those bad connections that had led Cozy to do so much harm 20 years ago. She could feel the weight of the thing in her magic. It seemed heavier than usual, but she imagined that was simply the weight of the moment itself. "All right, Cozy," Twilight said, levitating the thing up to the hole in the young filly's skull. "This is it." "May I say some final words?" the Pegasus asked. "They won't be your final words," Twilight reminded her. "Then my final words as I am now," Cozy replied. "Sure. I hope you rot in Tartarus for this." Twilight sighed. "Here we go." She inserted the rod into Cozy's skull. It slid easily through the hole. She kept pushing it along until it met some resistance. It was butting up against Cozy's gray matter. Twilight swallowed and then continued pushing. The rod slipped into Cozy's brain, forcing itself between the folds. When it had reached the correct depth, Twilight pushed the plunger. Inside Cozy's skull, the wires forced their way out into the soft tissue of Cozy's brain, cutting their way through like knives through the flesh of a ripe peach. Twilight twisted the handle of the leucotomy. Whatever that word is, once again. The wires cut, the connections were severed. Cozy twitched. It was done. "Oh, thank you so much, Princess Twilight." Featherfall. "I can't believe she's really coming home with us, dear." Windspark. "It's a miracle. After all these years, we finally have our daughter back." They were both crying. Twilight Sparkle, now sole ruler of Equestria for 20-some years, looked down on the two from her higher vantage point and smiled. She'd wiped her face. The blood was gone. No remnant left. "I'm just happy I was finally able to help Cozy," she said, with all the poise and grace and kindness and care in the world. and stuck in a wheelchair sat between her parents. Cozy's eyes lazily traced the patterns of the dust drifting through the air. She giggled to no one but herself. Yikes. Holy cow. All right, let's read the author's note here. I'd like to think neuroscience has evolved since the lobotomy was abandoned by it. Became more ethical, more honest with itself, but honestly, as someone who's been under psychiatric care for almost their entire life, well, it's a little hard to say sometimes. They're certainly trying. I wanted to depict a lobotomy from the perspective of the one giving it, someone who truly believes that the thing they are doing is in someone else's best interest. Lobotomies were always as controversial in the scientific community as they were popular in the 30s and 40s, but those who championed them did generally appear to have their patients' best interests in mind. We usually depict them as monsters, and maybe they were, but by all accounts, they were just trying to find some way to get people out of the horrors of the overflowing asylum system. They didn't find a very good way, but, well, you know, they tried. Fun fact, did you know lobotomies were most often given to women and homosexual folk? Because it wasn't fucked up enough already. When your metric of success is make difficult people less difficult, and your idea of a good wife is someone who is submissive and doesn't think for themselves, gotta love the 30s. Christ. Leucotomy, I don't know, depicted in the fic is a precursor to the transorbital lobotomy, also known as the ice pick lobotomy, which is a more commonly known version of the procedure in which a large metal spike is hammered through the eye socket into the brain. While this procedure is more brutal, the leucotomy, I'm just calling it leucotomy. If that's wrong or not, I don't care. It's more methodical and surgical, and I wanted to process in the fic to allow the two characters time to discuss what was happening. I noticed that the two were actually talking for each other, and I did think that was interesting. Famously, ice pick lobotomy could be done in minutes. This was treated as a good thing. Accounts talk of Walter Freeman, the inventor of the transorbital lobotomy, staying in one operating room while doing dozens of the procedures in a row. Patients would be wheeled into the room, he'd tap a spike into their brain, and then they'd be wheeled out, like an assembly line. Sorry, I did a lot of research on the subject last night before and during writing this, and I'm still processing it all. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the fic. You know what? I appreciate that they actually researched that. I wouldn't have looked into it that deep. I mean, I get the rough idea that I get the idea of what the message they're delivering here. That makes sense, and I feel like I've kind of heard and understand that before. But wow, they screwed up Cozy Glow. That was good. I do like that, actually. I thought that was interesting. Neat. But yeah, that was The Road to Joy, everybody. That was my first time reading that, so like I said, no clue what went into that, what to expect out of that. But as always, the link to this story will be down in this description below, so you folks can go read this yourselves or, do whatever. Check out the creator's other stories, and I will see you all in the next one.